Welcome to another Takt Talk. This season is being kicked off by Eric Maltz. Welcome, Eric.
I'm the first of the season.
You are the first. No pressure. You are the first.
Cool, man. I didn't know that.
A little bit about Eric for our audience. Eric Maltz is a multi-instrumentalist with an ear for the improvised and experimental. He runs the label Flower Myth, a platform where he curates and produces the Musine acoustic Jaguar. Eric is a composer and sound designer for film and multimedia and has had original music released on Possible Futures, Midnight Themes, Novel Sound, and Flower Myth. He has brought his live performance to Berlin Atonal, Trésor, and Kashmir Radio. And with that, please take it away, Eric.
Cool. Thank you so much for the introduction. And I really appreciate being part of this Takt Talk. And it's very cool to be the first. So that makes me happy. Yeah. So this is what I've been doing. And right now I'll do a quick plug for the Kashmir Radio thing, since that was the last thing that you said, is that I now have a radio show on Kashmir Radio called Embraceable Silence, Disappearing Mirror. That is once a month, and it is on the first Tuesday of every month at midnight. So if you can think of Tuesday and you think of midnight, and then you think of the first Tuesday of the month, and if you set your alarm and you wake up, you'll hear my show. That's all you have to do. It's easy. It's easy to remember. But cool, man. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. I have a bit of an agenda, in that tomorrow I'm releasing a soundtrack album that I had the privilege of working on, and it was a soundtrack that was composed for a documentary film called A Sky Commodified, which was released in 2019, and it's actually won some awards since then. And I worked, yeah, woo! And I worked on the soundtrack with a few other great musicians and artists, Nicole L'Huillier, Carlos Cabezas, Nicolas Kisic Aguirre, and Kevin Marblestone. So we kind of all came together and wrote all the music for this film. So, yes.
Okay, here we go. Sorry, my computer's being very slow. Edit that out.
Very good.
Or not. Do you mind if I ask you some questions to produce a nice little
please
conversation? Cool. So, I guess the first was, what was the impetus for this sonic work, and what got you amped up and started on this project initially?
Cool. So yeah, the thing that makes this really interesting is that the film crew, this is a documentary about, how do I explain what this is about? It's about data, and it's about like sort of astronomical data in that they went to the Atacama Desert to observe, to all the different observatories that they have in the Atacama Desert, and the reason why the Atacama Desert is such a special place for observatories and looking at the sky is that it's a very high altitude desert, and it's very dry. So there's not a lot of moisture in the air. So you get a lot of light. There's not so much interference, right? And so there's a lot of observatories there. And so this documentary is all about how the observatories are working now, and how the observatories, the amount of data that they're accumulating, is creating a whole new industry of like data storage. And it also means that astronomers and people studying the sky also no longer even have to go to the observatory to look at the sky. They just make a request for the information they want. They book the time when they're supposed to have it, and then the observatory is like mechanized. It gets the information and it sends it to the astronomers, you know? So it has this, there's this aspect to it, which is like totally crazy and mind blowing. And then you also have this idea of the Atacama Desert belonged to somebody before it belonged to the I don't know, this sort of like astro intelligence community. You know, there's an indigenous population. There's sacred places in this land, and so then it also explores the idea of all of this sort of like investment going into the area, but not necessarily going to the communities, the indigenous communities that are there in this area, which I think is something that we kind of typically see kind of all over the world when it comes to natural resources, whether it's a high desert with low moisture or some sort of oil field or anything else, you know. So it also kind of speaks to that issue about, you know, whose sky is it, who owns it, who has the rights to exploit it and benefit from it. So it kind of raises all of these very important questions. And so when the film crew was there filming the documentary, they decided, the directors and everybody involved also decided that they would want to compose the soundtrack of the film with sounds from the desert and with sounds from the observatories and sounds from all around. And so everybody there, I think Nicolas Kisic Aguirre was there. I think Nicole was there. Kevin was there. A lot of people were there. They were all just field recording the whole entire time, so that when they got back and we began to work on the soundtrack, there was like, I mean, more sound and more recordings than you could even listen to before the deadline. You know, it was just like an abundance of material. But it was, yeah, I mean, this was all very, very special to work with, you know. And Carlos Cabezas, he also, I believe, he was also in the Atacama Desert on a grant, or he had gotten some sort of opportunity to go there and record. So he also had his own set of field recordings from this desert that he was working with, in addition to the ones that the film crew had gathered. So there was just this like wealth of material that we had to go through, and so everybody just kind of dove in and dug in and just began like generating song after song after song after song of material that could be used as the soundtrack for the film. So I think that it was actually really nice, because it was not so much about scoring to picture, so to say, or you were more, it was more just like creating the album first, and then we went back afterwards and kind of, okay, this music works with this music works with this works with this, and just sort of like filling in the blanks with the soundtrack once they have the edit finished. So it was a really cool project.
That's interesting. It sounds like there are some. It sounds, first off, it sounds incredibly organic and dynamic. I mean, you're dealing with a very political topic here. You're dealing with the use of land, which is, you know, a contemporary issue, which is kind of all around the world. There are different forces who kind of lay claim to things for their whatever motive. And something else that strikes me is that there is this parallel between, it's kind of a funny metaphor that I'm seeing, that you have the sky, and you have this selection of sky with however many stars. I'm terrible at numbers, but then you have all this sound material with all the possibilities that you could possibly come out of with different songs, different formats. Mm-hmm. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's actually interesting to compare it to stars in terms of like permutations or combinations. You know, it's almost this. Yes, it's almost this way, you know, is that there was like an infinite number of possibilities, and I think all of us as kind of like creators approached the task differently. So it's also interesting to hear the results, is because the way that I dealt it is like I wanted everything to be almost like an instrument. So I was like taking samples and making like sampler instruments out of the sounds so that I could play them on the keyboard, you know. And, you know, Nicolas was just taking these like very precious sounds and like letting them play and layer and develop all over time, you know. And like Nicole was being kind of very busy with textures and filters, you know. It was really cool, man. And Carlos did these like really kind of like almost dark, evolving sort of epic pieces, you know. That was like really, everybody kind of brought their like their musicality to this like set of sounds, and ended up with these really like very different, very beautiful results.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you? We talked a little bit before the recording started, the official recording, about the backgrounds of the various cohort.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that an architect has a different approach to sound than, say, an improvisational musician? And do you think that's a part of it, like different approaches to sound making and editing?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we were. Maybe there's an organizational nature that we were talking about. You know, I think I always remember. I also watched. You know, there's this great documentary. I can't remember the name about Cecil Taylor, the pianist, and he had always a book open, or not always open. I mean, he has a million books, but he really loved the bridges of Calatrava. I hope I'm saying the name correctly. Something like that. I'm sure an architect would know what I'm talking about. They're shaking their head right now. But he loved the way the bridges were, you know. And I think one of his designs, I think, is the train station in Zurich. But I think there's this interesting. I think there's an interesting. Maybe it's form. I mean, before we were talking about organizing sounds, and organizing sounds, of course, is form. You know. I think architects are also very interested in form. I mean, any artist in any genre probably is interested in form, you know. But maybe there is maybe for like a musician seeking to visualize form, maybe somehow architecture is nice. And then maybe for an architect who's sick of looking at form, maybe music is nice. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe there's some sort of back and forth in that world, because it's very beautiful. I mean, I think if you can see a bridge, or I'm thinking of I don't know, man. I can't say any architect names. I should have done some research. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of the Wright brothers, but no, they were like they flew planes. They didn't make buildings, you know, like. And then I want to say Frank Lloyd Wright, or is it Lloyd Webber that did the musicals, and Wright is the architect.
Oh, see, now I'm dyslexic.
It's just like oatmeal. It's like oatmeal. There's a definite lack of form.
Oh, but still an appreciation for the structure and their stability, right?
Yeah, Charles Lloyd Webber did the musicals.
Gotcha.
Anyway, yeah. So I think there's a thing, you know. I think there's a natural. I think there's something going on, maybe also in the current of the arts right now, that where this sort of like multidisciplinary approach is very welcome for everybody from any kind of genre that they've been studying, or any kind of practice that they've been having. This kind of like, I think jumping over to another discipline or exploring another world it brings a breath of fresh air. So
yeah,
I think this is also very nice.
I agree. I mean, I've always. It's a double-edged sword, because like the changing of times, and how a young professional must do many things in order to stay afloat. Like being an artist is not just making images, or maybe talking to gallerists, but it really is the whole thing. I mean, one becomes a freelancer. It's nice to still find these pockets of, I guess, positivity, and be able to do both and enjoy both. And I guess that's what sticks out about this project, is that there's emerging. You're all these different ways of thinking emerging in this one space, and making work about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. Even the album cover here, maybe I can. It makes me think of. Is this a good? What should I share? I'm looking at my screen.
Okay.
Here. so you can see the album cover. Hold on, let me share my screen quick.
Sure, do it.
Brave Tag. Can you see that?
I can.
All right. So even this,
Yeah,
this is the album cover, Cable a Tierra. But there's these
beautiful.
holes in the ground that happen naturally, in the desert, in the Atacama Desert. They're called pozos, and inside there's naturally water from whatever rainfall there is or anything like this. And so when you're looking at the ground and you have this perfectly still pool of water, it naturally reflects the sky. And so you can see it, we also like this sort of line between the ground and the sky. It's almost like you're looking at the ground and then you can also see the sky, which I think also kind of captures that spirit of like these different worlds coming together. You know, these two different worlds or three different worlds or however many worlds somebody has inside, kind of colliding, and this is sort of the result, like the musical or the sonic result, I think.
It's nice.
You know, so I think it's nice. I think it works really well on a lot of levels, and this is also why I really also like working with people that maybe are not necessarily that are coming from all different areas. You know, it's because then you end up with this sort of like really interesting cross-pollination, and you hear things that you never would have, like you get ideas that you never would have thought of, you hear things you never would have done, you know, you're influenced. It's like this really nice exchange that also
Yeah.
happens.
This leads me to my next question naturally. I'm not even gonna look at my questions for that one. What was something that one of these people brought to the table that helped you reflect on your own process of making? I know you didn't go to the space, but was there something that, some factoid, some approach, someone's aesthetic that helped you reflect on not just your own making, but the I guess the topic at hand as well?
That's a good question. I think in the way it was filmed, it was sort of this. It was really wonderfully done, and it was basically there was either interviews where it was somebody talking on the screen, or it was like these kind of fantastic either like overhead drone shots of like these giant like multi-radar dish observatory structure, you know what I mean? So it's like you were kind of also going between like the human and then like just these kind of like epic huge long shots. And so that kind of like really informed me, because it was almost like dealing with two different sort of like time continuums. You know, it's like you have like the day-to-day time continuum of people talking, and then you have sort of this like you're stepping outside of reality and into like this time stream where like 100 years passes in the blink of an eye, you know, and you have these like huge static mega structures built into this like desert landscape, you know, like these sort of like this idea of like kind of like permanence, you know. And so I think that for me was really, I guess, very interesting to just sort of like experience, you know, as I'm watching the film, and then also think about in terms of like how I'm going to write my music, and then also how we're going to place the sound throughout the piece, throughout the film.
Yeah, I love art that makes me feel really small. I like art that reminds me not to live in like this like self-centered fear. This work has that quality, it sounds like to me, where it's like, look how fucking small you are in the whole scheme of things. It's really, I appreciate that. I think art doesn't do that enough these days, or maybe it is, but I'm not paying close enough attention. That could also be a possibility. Cool. Can we listen to some of it together?
Yeah. Let me play you. I'm going to play you a piece. It's actually the one piece on the soundtrack that's not composed at all. It's actually just a raw field recording that was taken by Kevin Marblestone, and we love this field recording so much we included it. It's part of the soundtrack of the film, and then also I wanted to include it on the album when we released it, just because it's like it's so cool. But he was basically recording. I don't know if I should tell you before or after we listen to it. Well, I'll tell you after we listen to it. It'll be better. And let me see if I can share it with you. Do the technology thing. Hold on. This one. And okay, I'm gonna hit play. Oh no, we can't hear it on that one. Hold on, one more time. Let's do it on this one. Let's see. Share the screen. Share. All right, cool. You can hear it. So we'll play. It is called tube whistling. Let me know.
That was gorgeous. I'm glad you didn't tell me how it was made, because I would have spent more time thinking about it rather than its creation. But now I'll shut up and give you back the floor. Yeah, it was haunting. I mean, it reminds me of so many little other things. It reminds me of a lot of like I had a very, and I hope this isn't insulting to the work. I think it's a huge compliment. It reminded me a lot of oh gosh, now I can't think of the damn name. The Basinski, the disintegration tapes. Yeah, there's something very haunting about it. It's very simple, but it's incredibly organic. And so the wind is just, it's blowing across the top, like if I have like a bottle. Uh, it was gorgeous. I'm glad that everything else was there. It really paints a real picture of him singing. I would love to see an image of these now. Now after our talk, I'm gonna go look up some images. That was awesome. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Is there anything else you'd like to plug? Cool. Cool. Thanks for plugging. Thanks for sharing. And thank you so much for being here and sharing this work and having this little conversation with me. Cool. Same, likewise.